Right, so with Braverman gone, I've covered that in another video earlier today, if you've not seen it. The mood turned to Sunak's reshuffle. As much as he's dragged his feet in getting around to sacking Braverman in the aftermath of the awful scene seen by the Cenotaph on Saturday, he hasn't hung around replacing her with the former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, always a Tory loyalist. But if the most misnamed MP in Parliament is what passes for a safe pair of hands for Rishi Sunak, he's in an enormous amount of trouble. And as if to underline just how little talent he has to choose from, Cleverly's replacement at the Foreign Office is causing justifiable anger and outrage and disbelief, frankly, as former Prime Minister and architect of austerity, the source of so much of the poverty we see today, David Cameron, not an MP, so has been hurriedly put into the House of Lords instead, yet another unelected member of that overstuffed second chamber, so that Sunak can appoint him to head the Foreign Office. Call Me Dave is back in all his ham-faced, hug-a-hoodie harmfulness. Right, so we've got rid of a hard right harridan for which there will be much justifiable celebration. Of course there will. We don't get very much good news these days after all, do we? Braverman dumped back on the back benches, but you have to wonder for how long the way things are to be replaced by the useless idiot James Cleverly. It tickles me somewhat to imagine the guy now in charge of our police is a guy who once tried to deny he'd been on his phone during a road traffic collision. But this is part of the course now with the Tories, isn't it? Don't expect for much to change, though. Islamophobia will continue, for one. He once denied that it even exists because Islam is not a race. Well, you can say the same about Judaism, can't you? But I bet you won't deny the existence of anti-Semitism, eh, Jimbo? How about that time you laughed off fellow Tory MP Desmond Swayne doing blackface, though? Like I said, most misnamed MP in Parliament. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Putting him in charge of anything is like trusting a goldfish with the nation's nuclear codes. Well, do you have anything to say on your first day as Home Secretary then, James? Well, of course he did. Have a guess what he might have chosen to talk about. He said, "It's been a huge privilege to serve as Foreign Secretary, and in that time I've worked closely with my colleagues in the Home Office, cracking down on migration, reducing the number of small boat arrivals, and now as the Home Secretary, I'm absolutely committed to stopping the boats as we promised." Yeah, it's like Leaky Sue never left, isn't it? Stop the boats! Stop the boats! Stop the boats! In case you didn't realise as well, Jimbo, number of boat arrivals have increased this year. You've not helped reduce them at all, though I very much doubt a legal safe asylum route is on your agenda any more than it was on Suella Braverman's. But Cleverly getting another elevated ministerial post he has no talent for really isn't the big story. In fact, his replacement at the Foreign Office is arguably a bigger story even than Braverman getting sacked, because nobody saw it coming. But because Rishi Sunak is so desperate for talent that even amongst 331 Tory MPs, he can't find one with enough talent to replace someone as talentless as James Cleverly, unbelievably, and completely out of the blue, it seems, David Cameron is back, coming in to hold his first ever ministerial brief outside of that of being the Prime Minister, whose austerity has destroyed the social fabric of the country as it has. Dodgy Dave, the shiny-faced pig fancier himself, returns, but in order to be appointed Foreign Secretary, given that he's not an MP, he ran away after Brexit blew up in his face, didn't he? Remember that? Left us with Theresa May. He's been hurriedly stuffed into the House of Lords. Life peerage, completely unelected as that is, meaning we have a completely unelected Foreign Secretary being appointed by our completely unelected Prime Minister. Democracy, don't you just love it? Well, how has this just gone down with Tory MPs? Well, a leaked WhatsApp came about quite shortly after this announcement came out, as there always seems to be. There's always a leaked WhatsApp with the Tories, isn't there? On the news of this appointment, and it read, "I will resist pointing out that David Cameron is mired in Greensill, the largest lobbying scandal to hit the government. He had to resign because he failed to stand up to the EU and is completely gutless. He won't be able to address the House of Commons whilst we are witnessing two major conflicts. He's an unelected Foreign Secretary appointed by an unelected Prime Minister." That was leaked to Sky's Sophie Ridge by a Tory MP from one of their groups. It's a horrible thought to think that they were thinking the same way as I was. All of that, of course, is true. The Greensill lobbying scandal, if you're not familiar with it, it's where David Cameron was working for them for £1 million a year for just 25 days' work, I might add. And in that time, he secured a £5 million worth in government contracts, plural, for them the year before they went bust. But that wasn't before Dodgy Dave sold his shares in Greensill for some £7 million. It was as if you might have seen it coming. Let's not stop there, though. He's also working for a US biotech called Illumina. They got a £123 million government contract. You can guess where when it's that size, can't you? From Matt Hancock via the PPE VIP lane. Yes, it's another one of those scandals. How about the Paradise Papers? Remember them? He was involved in tax fiddles with that, wasn't he? That was his family. If he's going to come back into government, would now be a good time to investigate those tax affairs then? We know he ran away when Brexit blew up in his face, and now he's back seemingly to fill his pockets once more, because he can never have enough. He's in the Foreign Office with his trotters up, as Danny Dyer might have put it. As a member of the House of Lords, he cannot actually take any questions in the Commons, which is something the WhatsApp alluded to. Therefore, he will have to send out junior ministers each and every time that Foreign Office questions are being called. Regarding that, and regarding those two conflicts that were alluded to in the WhatsApps as well, most pertinently, which being the ones between Russia and Ukraine and the ones in Palestine and Gaza. Israel and Gaza even. As far as the first conflict goes, the Tory party have always been rolling in rubles. They do love their Russian donors, don't they? And Cameron, much like Boris Johnson after, had no trouble taking Russian money, yet remain constantly repeating that they aren't buying influence. Well, of course they are. They wouldn't give you any money otherwise, would they, if they weren't buying something? It's what all donors do. You'd have to be as thick as James Cleverly to think otherwise. And that goes for all parties who take sizable donations from wealthy vested interests. Yes, I'm looking at you as well, Kier Starmer. On the matter of Israel and Palestine, though, Cameron has a very two-faced track record. When first elected, Cameron had it right when he referred to the Gaza Strip as a giant open prison. But then, being a Tory, they all have their price, don't they? A price for their principles. And Dodgy Dave's were up for sale to the point that by 2015 he became a born-again Netanyahu fanboy and was described by Israeli paper Haaretz as the most pro-Israel British Prime Minister ever. And the evidence is there for it. Under his administration, they changed the law to protect Israelis from arrest for war crimes, failed to call attacks on Gaza disproportionate, just as we're seeing ministers and shadow ministers do now. They consistently oversaw a lack of support for Palestine at the UN and tried to block Palestinians from joining the International Criminal Court. Just what exactly was your price in the end over that then, Dave? Cameron's foreign policy history is nothing to be proud of either. For the one standout example of his foreign policy, just look at the state of Libya, still to this day. Bombed to hell to remove Colonel Gaddafi, and it fell to ISIS straight after because nobody stayed behind to make sure the country was put back together again. Political and economic collapse ensued, from which it has never recovered. It now remains a rogue state with slave markets still. Sunak's Tories are not happy about this appointment. Labour will no doubt be crowing about Sunak having to dig up relics of the past to shore up his government. But when Starmer had to dig up Peter Mandelson from the 1990s to hold his hand, those blows aren't likely to land. Both parties are looking backwards to past success in the hope for future ones and offer nothing, certainly not change, by doing so. Speaking of Starmer, given he's basically filled the niche Sunak left as the Tories have gone ever more right-wing and become the David Cameron in Parliament, I don't quite know what he'll do now he's facing a government with the real thing in it. I think we should all spare a thought for Nadine Dorries as well at this point. She spent an entire year holding her own constituents for ransom, wanting a peerage and being denied it, and here comes David Cameron out of nowhere and just taking one anyway. God bless. Back to writing crap books for you it is. One problem for Sunak that isn't going to go away, though, is the issue of the ERG. Suella Braverman going means their support for Sunak is gone, and neither Cleverly nor Cameron are going to placate them. Cameron was terrified of the ERG, and I doubt that has changed. We know when things get tough, Dave does a runner, and he's set for life now in the Lords, come what may. Dennis Skinner said it best when he stood in Parliament and said of Cameron, "This man has done more to divide this nation than anybody else. He's looked after his own pockets. I still refer to him as Dodgy Dave." Cameron's politics was responsible for 330,000 excess deaths due to austerity. That's his legacy. Skinner is right in that during his tenure as PM and since leaving Parliament, all he's done is enrich himself. Now he's back. That can never be a good thing. But it's also symbolic of the Tory party itself that they're done for. This is the best they can do, bringing back damaged goods that can't even be held to account directly. It's a sham. If David Cameron is your solution, there's no saving you. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation for you where perhaps Cameron might bring the donors back to Rishi Sunak's aid. They were threatening to defund him just last month, after all. Who knows? Maybe this is why he's really back. Bring in some more of those Russian rubles. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.